The morning they tried to take my house, I realized peace is the kind of thing rich neighborhoods pretend to believe in, right up until someone they don't approve of moves in next door. Stone Ridge was a place where the lawns were symmetrical, the dogs were purebred, and the people were polished on the outside, but sharp enough on the inside to cut you open without leaving a mark. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to HOA Stories. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And then there was me, Ethan Miller, divorced antique restorer, ex-Boston native, and proud new owner of the only house in the whole community that wasn't approved by their self-appointed monarchy, the HOA. The real kicker? I wasn't even in their HOA. But that didn't stop them from trying to destroy my home, or me. The mansion was built in 1942 stucco walls, stained glass windows, Spanish tile roof, and a soul older than every single one of the plastic smiles across the street. When I found the listing, it looked like a ruin, cracked foundation, peeling paint, a porch sagging like a tired old man. Most people saw an eyesore. I saw a chance to rebuild something beautiful. Hell, maybe to rebuild myself too. I spent every day sanding old floors, replacing beams, restoring the garden to its original geometry using faded blueprints I found at the county archives. For the first time in years, I woke up actually wanting to work, wanting to breathe. But every hammer strike, every new tile laid, someone was watching. Her, across the street. Tall blonde hair coiled so tight it probably cut off circulation to her brain, pearls that looked like she stole them from a museum. Posture, like she'd been trained at a finishing school for sociopaths. Karen Briggs, the self-declared queen of Stone Ridge. She never waved, never smiled. Just glared through that bay window while whispering poison into the ears of every neighbor she could corner. I didn't care at first. Suburban politics weren't my thing. But then the black SUV rolled into my driveway. Tinted windows. Discount police uniforms that looked like they came from Party City's authority figure aisle. Two guys stepped out, one tall with sunglasses glued to his face, the other wide-shouldered with a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Morning," I said, wiping dust off my hands. "Mr. Miller?" the tall one asked, voice deep, practiced, a little too theatrical. "That's me." He squared his shoulders. "Officer Daniel Lawrence, Stone Ridge Police Division." Stone Ridge didn't have a police division. It barely had a community pool. The second guy stepped forward, flashing a laminated ID that looked like it was printed on a home office printer. "Inspector Ryan Lawrence, Compliance," he added. "Brothers. Goons. Definitely not cops. We've received multiple reports of code violations and unauthorized renovations," Ryan announced, like he was reading from a script. I blinked. "By who?" He ignored the question. "You need to register with the HOA. 3 years of back dues and architectural fines. Total comes to $18,000. I laughed. Out loud. They didn't. "Wrong guy, fellas," I said. "My house isn't part of Stone Ridge HOA. Daniel tilted his head. "It is under the visual jurisdiction of the development. You're affecting neighborhood harmony." "Visual jurisdiction?" I repeated. Is that a legal term or something Karen made up over afternoon cocktails? His jaw clenched. "Failure to pay will lead to enforcement, penalties, safety inspections, even condemnation if it comes to that." There it was. The threat. "If you tear this down," I said slowly, "you better hope I'm under it when you try." They didn't like that. "Your refusal to cooperate will only make the situation worse," Daniel said. I smiled. Calm, confident. "You boys got a real badge? A county permit? Anything that says you're not just HOA mall cops?" Silence. Just the faint sound of their SUV engine ticking. "Leave," I said. "Now." They didn't argue. They stomped back to their SUV like insulted toddlers whose imaginary game had been spoiled. Gravel spit behind them as they drove off. As soon as they turned the corner, I walked inside, opened my laptop, and created a new folder, Stone Ridge, Threat Log. Entry 1. Little did I know I'd need dozens more. That night, the house seemed restless. Old wood creaked like it was warning me. Every time I stepped outside, I swore I felt someone watching from the trees. The next morning proved I wasn't imagining it. Security alert, motion detected, front gate, 6:42 a.m., the same SUV. Same tinted windows, same idiots. I stepped out onto the porch with my coffee. They didn't say hello, just marched straight toward me like I was already under arrest. "You forgot something," Ryan said, thrusting a paper at me. I didn't take it. I stared at it. Cheap copy paper. Crooked header. Fake seal pixelated like a lousy meme. "Stop work order," it read. "Signed by Community Code Enforcement." It was hilarious if the stakes weren't so damn high. "Refusing inspection is a criminal offense," Daniel threatened. "City jail's not a nice place." My smile widened. "You ever been to city jail, Danny? You look like the kind of guy who cries when his protein shake is late." Ryan stepped forward. "Pay the dues, and we make this all go away. Simple. Quick, so that's what this is," I said. "An extortion pitch." They froze. Wrong phrase. Very wrong phrase. Before they could recover, I lifted my phone, still recording, in my pocket the entire time, and held it up. "You're done here." 10 seconds before I called the sheriff. Their masks cracked. Panic flickered in their eyes. They backed away, realizing they picked a fight with the wrong man. As the SUV disappeared down the street, adrenaline finally hit me. They weren't bluffing. They were preparing to take my home by any means necessary. I stared at the cracked walkway leading to my door, the restored stained glass, the garden I'd resurrected from death. For the first time, I understood. This wasn't about rules. It wasn't about lawn height or neighborhood vibes. They wanted the land. And I was now standing between them and whatever empire Karen was building. That was her mistake. I'd already lost one life in Boston. I wasn't going to lose another. So I made a quiet, dangerous promise to myself. If they wanted a war, fine, I'd give them one. After the second visit, the air around my house changed. The silence felt wired, electric, like the static before lightning tears open the sky. I tried to keep working, sanding down a mahogany banister older than my parents', but every sound made me look over my shoulder. The mansion wasn't haunted. It was hunted. That night, sleep came in short bursts. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw the SUV rolling up my driveway again, except next time they'd have real help. A judge, a sheriff, a bulldozer. I woke before dawn and brewed coffee that tasted like adrenaline. 6:08 a.m. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. West tree line. I pulled up the security feed. Through the pixel grain, a shape lingered behind one of the oaks, not an animal. Then a man, hunched, watching. A faint glimmer, the reflection from a phone lens. He lifted it, took photos, then slid back into the brush. Ross Lawrence. The shorter brother. The nervous one. He thought hiding behind a tree made him invisible. The camera caught everything. And the shaking in his hands? Oh yeah, he was scared. They were escalating, but their confidence was cracking. I stepped outside deliberately, walking heavy so the boards creaked loud on purpose. Ross vanished like a guilty raccoon. Okay, I thought. We're past warnings, past fake authority. They're building a case, a false one. The kind that ends with a condemned house and a developer saying, "Oops, I wasn't going to let it happen." Around 9, a rusted red Ford F-150 rumbled up my driveway. Headlight foggy, tailgate dented from decades of living. Behind the wheel was the man I'd only seen at a distance, the quiet neighbor with the white beard and steel eyes. The kind of eyes that have seen storms and survived them. He stepped out slowly, every movement careful, respectful. The opposite of the Lawrences. "You, Ethan?" he asked. "That's me." He nodded once. "Name's Hank Carter." Figured it's time we spoke. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or more afraid. Hank walked past me to the edge of the porch and leaned against a column I'd reinforced 2 weeks ago. "You stirred up the Queen," he said. "The Queen?" He jerked his head toward the pristine colonial with black shutters and a brand new Escalade parked in the driveway. A house that radiated smugness even from a distance. "Karen Briggs," he clarified, "runs Stone Ridge HOA like a cult. You're her new sacrifice." I let out a slow breath. "Any idea why?" "Oh, I know why," he said. "Rumor is she wants your land. Been planning an expansion for years. Bigger clubhouse, more parking, community amenities, which is HOA talk for things that make Karen more powerful." "And my house ruins her empire," I said bitterly. Hank nodded. "She expected it to rot until she could call it a safety hazard. Then you showed up with tools and pride and screwed up her little blueprint. So she sends fake cops." Hank snorted. "Those boys? They're contractors. Got kicked off a repo gig a few years back for trying to seize a car without papers. Been stuck doing Karen's dirty work since. Everything clicked and it made me furious." "You talk like you've seen this happen before," I said. He turned his gaze toward the horizon. "I watched a widower a few blocks down lose his house years back. They made up violations so fast the ink didn't have time to dry. City didn't bother checking. Old man was gone inside of 6 months. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. "That's not happening here." "Good," Hank said, "because they're already setting the stage." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. It was a photocopy of a notice. Same fake seal, same wording, only the address belonged to Hank. "They're trying to make it look like your property is hurting values for the whole block," he explained. "That's a coordinated scam," I said. "Exactly." We stood there in silence for a moment as anger settled into something harder. Resolve. "So what do I do?" I asked. Hank gave me a long, measuring look. "Fight. Document everything. And when the time comes, don't flinch." Then he tapped my porch railing twice, almost like a blessing, and walked back to his old Ford. As he drove away, I realized something. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. By noon, I was deep in the county's online records. If they wanted war by paperwork, that was a language I spoke fluently. After 2 hours of digging, I found it. Stone Ridge HOA. Preliminary expansion request. Parcel 14A. Potential acquisition parcel. 14A was my land. Filed 3 months before I bought it. No denial. No approval. Just waiting. Waiting for me to fail. Waiting for the Lawrences to create violations. Waiting for Karen to take what she wanted. But they hadn't counted on one fact. My house was historic. 1942 original architecture. Qualifying age for legal protection. And under the Virginia Historic Preservation Act, no HOA could force changes or demolition of a protected structure. If I could prove the house had original architectural elements restored, not replaced, I could secure immunity from HOA rule forever. Game changer. I gathered everything. Blueprints, receipts for restored tiles and windows, photos of original beams and ironwork. I built a pristine evidence trail. And then I did something even better. I bought a tiny strip of land behind my property. A forgotten sliver owned by a bank that probably didn't even remember they had it. Cost me less than my drill set. By sunset, the deed was mine, and with that deed, I qualified to form a homeowners association of my own. One property, one owner. One mission: protect this house at all costs. I filed the documents with the county, Historic Hilltop Preservation Association. Purpose: safeguard historic architecture. Authority: override aesthetic demands from non-governmental entities. Legal. Official. Untouchable. When the email confirmation hit my inbox, I actually laughed. A deep, victorious sound that echoed through the old hallways. Karen had declared war. I had just built my fortress. The next day, a white Lexus pulled up to the curb in front of my house. I recognized her silhouette immediately, hair pulled so tight it probably whistled when she blinked. Karen stepped out, heels stabbing the pavement like she was trying to kill it. She marched up my driveway as if the ground belonged to her. "We need to talk," she said, voice sugar-coated with venom. I leaned against the doorframe. "Afternoon, Karen." Her eyes flicked to my restored windows. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "That's funny," I said. "I was going to tell you the same." She handed me a thick envelope. "This is your last opportunity to cooperate," she said. "Join the HOA. Pay your dues. We'll forget the violations. And if I don't?" She smiled, a cold, reptilian stretch of mouth. "Then we'll remove the structure." I stepped forward, smiling just as cold. "My house is now part of a registered historic HOA," I said, "which outranks yours. Legally." The smile died. "You can't do that," she whispered. "I already did." She stared at me with pure hatred like I had stolen her crown. "This isn't over," she hissed. "No," I agreed quietly. "It's just getting interesting." She stormed off, heels punching holes in my gravel like tiny gavel strikes of rage. When she reached her Lexus, I could see her hands shaking, not with fear, with fury. The kind of fury powerless people feel when they realize the throne beneath them is just a cheap folding chair. That night, I sat on the porch with bourbon in hand and the stained glass glowing softly behind me. The air smelled like jasmine and victory. Wind rustled the leaves. My home exhaled. I whispered to the darkness, "Come at me." Because whatever move she made next, I'd be ready. And if she wanted to take away the life I rebuilt, she'd have to burn with it. 2 days passed before their next move. Enough time for hope to creep in, the dangerous kind that whispers maybe it's over. Maybe Karen finally understood she'd lost, but evil doesn't sleep. It lurks, it recalculates. I was finishing the final coat of varnish on the staircase railing when the doorbell rang. 3 hard knocks. Not the polite kind. This was a warning shot. I wiped my hands and opened the door. 2 men stood there again, not the Lawrences this time. New goons. Polished sneakers, matching blue polo shirts with a logo that read, "Community Compliance." Clipboards clutched like shields. Their smiles were stiff, professional, soulless. "Mr. Miller," one said, "we're here to conduct an interior safety inspection due to a report of structural hazards." I raised an eyebrow. "From who?" "Anonymous Community Concern," the second answered. "Of course." The most cowardly label in the English language. "No thank you," I said. "This is private property." They glanced at each other, confidence wavering. "Refusal will be documented as obstruction," the taller one warned. "If required, we can obtain forced entry authorization." I leaned against the frame, amused. "By who?" "The HOA Army?" His jaw twitched. That's when the real voice came from behind them. "Gentlemen," called a calm drawl. Sheriff Lawson emerged from the side of the house, hands resting casually near his belt buckle. I had called him earlier just a hunch, but seeing him step into view felt like a cavalry charge. "Would you two mind telling me what department you work for?" Lawson asked. "We're contracted through the county," the taller one stammered. "Funny," Lawson said, "because I personally approve compliance contractors, and I've never seen either of your faces in my life." He plucked the fake badge clipped to the shorter man's belt and examined it. "This is printed on cardstock," he said flatly. "Barely even straight." Silence. The men were trembling now. "Impersonating an officer or inspector," Lawson continued, "is a crime. Lucky for you, I'm feeling patient today." He motioned toward the street. "Turn around, hands behind your back." The shorter one squeaked. We didn't know." "You knew," Lawson snapped. "You just thought you wouldn't get caught." He cuffed them both as they protested uselessly. "It's Karen," one blurted. "She told us it was legal. She said the police didn't get involved in compliance issues anymore." Lawson smirked. "She lied. As he radioed for a pickup unit, I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed. Evidence. Witness confession. Impersonation. Illegal enforcement. The whole scam collapsing like a wet cardboard castle. When the sheriff's car pulled away with the 2 fake inspectors inside, Lawson turned back to me. "You've been patient long enough," he said. "Time to flip the board." And that's exactly what I planned to do. The hearing was scheduled 3 days later. Word spread faster than wildfire in a drought. You could feel it in the air that morning. The tension, the expectation, the quiet crackle of collective curiosity. People who wouldn't even look at me a month ago were suddenly desperate to get seats. By the time I arrived, the hallway was packed. Cameras, reporters, neighbors who'd once sneered now whispering like they were auditioning for the jury. Inside, the community expansion proposal hearing looked more like a courtroom drama. Karen sat near the front with her attorney. Well, her new attorney. The first one had bailed after learning the truth. This new guy looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Smart man. Even the chair beside Karen seemed to avoid touching her. I took a seat next to my lawyer, Ezra Merritt Shark, in a suit, the kind of man who could reduce a boardroom to tears with a single paragraph of statute. The county hearing officer banged a gavel. "This hearing concerns the Stone Ridge HOA expansion request," she announced. Karen's attorney sprung up like a startled ferret. "We request immediate approval to incorporate the Miller property into the HOA for purposes of community consistency." Ezra stood without being called. "Motion to dismiss," he interrupted smoothly. Karen's attorney blinked. "On what grounds?" Ezra placed a binder thick enough to break bones onto the table. "Legal grounds. Historic preservation supersedes HOA expansion. My client's property is now protected under Virginia code, which renders this request invalid." The hearing officer flipped through the documents. Her eyebrows climbed. Karen's attorney sputtered, scrambling for words. Well, aesthetics, community standards." Ezra keyed up the screen behind him. Footage began to play. The Lawrence brothers on my porch, threatening me with condemnation. Karen's recorded voice promising other options. The illegal stop-work forms, forged signatures, fake badge threats. Every lie projected 12 feet tall. Gasps filled the room like oxygen flooding a fire. Karen's attorney dropped his pen. She tried to speak, tried to spin it, but her throat locked up. Her face turned the color of expired yogurt. Ezra finished with a slice of pure legal steel. "This isn't expansion. It's coercion. Extortion. Abuse of power. And the county will not be a partner in criminal activity." The hearing officer didn't even hesitate. Request denied. All supporting actions referred to the Commonwealth's attorney for criminal review. Karen folded inward like her spine had dissolved. Her world shrank in a single sentence. The room erupted into whispers. "That's illegal. She went too far. I knew she was nuts." "About time." Karen's attorney quietly stepped away from her, like she was contagious. I stood, took a breath. War was over. History won. As I walked out, Hank Carter was leaning against the hallway wall, cane resting under his hand. He nodded once, pride in his tired eyes. "Well," he said, "you cleaned up the hornet's nest." "More like burned it to the ground," I replied. Sometimes, fire's the only language bullies understand. Sunlight hit us as the doors opened. The world outside seemed brighter than yesterday, like the house itself had been holding its breath, and finally exhaled. When I got home, I stood under the oak trees and looked at my mansion. The house I fought for, the house that refused to die for someone else's profit. The porch light flickered softly, stained glass shimmered gold and blue, the garden bloomed like it remembered what pride felt like. For the first time since leaving Boston, I didn't feel like a runaway. I felt like a man who had something worth defending. Neighbors started walking by, this time not avoiding me. They waved, smiled, some even cheered. One woman called out, "Thank you for standing up." Maybe I didn't do it for them, but I was glad they could stand a little taller because someone finally did. Later, I sat in the old rocking chair I'd restored myself, bourbon in hand, quiet in my lungs. Peace everywhere, no watchful eyes, no fake cops, no threats taped to my door. Just my house and the future. I whispered into the soft night, "This is home." And the house, every brick, every board, every living memory inside those walls seemed to whisper back, "Welcome back." If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping transformation tales like this, leave a like, request another story, or tell me what genre to conquer next.